All right. Hello. Welcome to the Artificially Intelligent podcast. That is where a Black African American musician named Antar Goodwin in Philadelphia, that's you, and a cracker ass hunky American comedian in the flyover state of Iowa discuss life.
Indeed.
I do have something for us to discuss today, but I want to start with I want to tell you something that I'm not sure how to tell it without giving it away, so I'm just going to tell it. This morning, today, I took my kids to my wife and I took our kids to a fun park, a theme park, water park, go-karts, mini golf, shit like that. All right, I'm going to do this step by step. Get in the car. I want my phone charged at 100% for the day at the water park, for the theme park. So I unplug my iPod. I unplug it. I unplug the USB port. I plug in my phone so it will charge. Start driving. And of course, I want to hear music. So I hit play on my iPod. Start listening to music. Music is coming in through the car. Listen to, 4 or 5 songs. You call me. My phone rings. It is you. I am driving, so I hit answer on the car. I don't answer on my phone. I answer on the car. So now what happens when you have the phone on Bluetooth going through the car and the iPod connected directly, the phone supersedes, overrides the iPod music, and then you come out my speakers. And I say, hey, I'm going to the theme park with my kids. We'll talk later. You said, cool. I hang up. And the music's gone. Usually when you hang up, the music returns. And I'm like, where the fuck is my music? So I look down, and that's when I remembered, oh, I unhooked my iPod so that I could plug in my phone, and it's still unhooked. Except it was playing music through the car until you called me. Completely unhooked. And this is an iPod, which means it's easily 10 years old. It has no Bluetooth. It can't pair with the phone. It can't jump into the system. It has to be manually connected. And I unconnected it and hit play, and it played through my car. My car is haunted. And then I tested it. Like, I'm driving, like, okay, let's press play, unplug it, music dies. Plug it in, music's back, unplug it, music dies, leave it unplugged, press play, music doesn't start, plug it in, music. It played 4 songs through my car, completely unhooked. I have no explanation for it.
It's a glitch in the Matrix.
There is something going on.
I mean,
my car is Christine.
Yes.
I mean, because when I saw that it was unhooked after hanging up the phone, when I was saying, okay, bye, Barrett, and I hung up the phone and the music didn't start again, I'm like, oh, shit, it's unhooked. And then I went, wait, it's unhooked. I unhooked it to plug in the phone. I remember those actions. I have no explanation for it. None. It's goddamn freaky. That's not what I wanted to talk about tonight, but that's where I thought we would start. Just freaky goddamn story.
It is. It's a little crazy. I have the sense that, and maybe I'm just a conspiracy theorist, but I have the sense that there's something going on in your iPod that you just aren't aware of. There's just technology you don't know exists there. That's all.
I would think that if it wasn't so goddamn old. I mean,
yeah. I mean, maybe,
Apple is. I blame Apple. It's time to switch to a Zune. I need to buy a Zune.
Does anybody even know what that is?
They know it from Guardians of the Galaxy too.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So here's what I wanted to talk about tonight.
Yes.
I have been researching a little bit, not a lot, but I've been looking at critical race theory because it's all in the news and everybody's either pushing it or angry about it. It's 2 sides that are diametrically opposed, as they always are. So I figured, well, I should find out what this shit is, just so I can be not care about it either way.
And what did you find out?
Here's not what I found out. It's what I've determined. I think it is and you can correct me in all of this. I
Mm-hmm.
think it is yet just another piece of, and I know it didn't start this way, but this is how it's finishing,
Mm-hmm.
piss poor marketing by Democrats and or liberals, and fantastic
Hmm.
marketing by Republicans. Because,
Explain.
well, critical race theory did not come about because of liberals saying we need to teach this. It, came about a couple decades ago due to collegiate professors, blah blah blah. But the whole
Yeah,
point
well,
is,
mostly in law school.
yeah,
It's not even something that goes near public schools, but whatever.
exactly. Um, but the like defund the police, the header critical race theory is just bad marketing, which means, oh, critical, you're critical of the white race. They can twist, the right can twist and contort it and say whatever they want about it. And the left is really bad at marketing, so they never have a decent response. So it is just another wedge issue that allows both sides to get angry and yell at one another. And looking at it, I think the best way to describe it and or approach it is it's just history class. It should be, here's history the way it happened. Like this is it. It doesn't need the title critical race theory. It's literally history. This is the country of this. Like there's an example that's going around on Facebook right now that says, I'm going to make up the numbers. World War II said that if you join the GI Bill, you'll get your college paid for. You'll get a home loan. You'll get a home equity loan because you joined the army. Um, that didn't out of 200,000 African American soldiers that joined, only 1% got loans because the rest were rejected. And we don't teach that in history class, so they call that critical race theory, the systemic racism. Why don't we just call it history class? Why don't we just say, yeah, we've had a lot of fuck ups in our history, and instead of constantly burying them and not owning up to them and or now calling them something special, just call it fucking history. Here's our fucking history, warts and all the horrible shit we did. Can we just fucking start moving forward? Can we look at our ugly past, acknowledge it, keep moving forward? Because the left wants to embrace it too much, and the white wants to, the right the right wants to deny it too much, and it's just another wedge issue. And the one final thing I'll say, when I say that the left wants to embrace it too much, the reason I say that is because of something you and I think we've talked about it on here, but I know we've discussed it in private. um, I know someone very personally, this is not a secondhand story. I know someone who had to take one of those stupid fucking job training things, sensitivity trainings. And the lecturer was a guy that kept saying, no longer will we use the terms, say, our ancestors were involved in slavery. We did slavery. White people, we did that. No longer can we say that our ancestors destroyed the indigenous populations. We did that. We must use the inclusive we. And it's like, okay, fuck you. That I own up to our history and all the shit we did, but don't start saying we did that today. Can we just fucking move on? Can we teach this shit and
I
teach it
mean,
correctly?
yeah, it's funny because for some reason I knew that was what you wanted to talk about today, and I was like, it's like something that has dominated my weekend,
Hmm.
not because I want it to, but because it just has. Here's the thing. I'm going to read you the definition of critical. I already know what it is, but
Yeah.
I'm going to read to you what it is, right? Critical race theory, CRT, is a body of legal scholarship and an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States that seeks to critically examine U.S. law as it intersects with issues of race in the U.S. and to challenge the mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice. Right now, here's
Wait,
the thing.
what the thing is with that? Yeah, here's the thing. That's fucking boring. That's why nobody knows what critical race theory is because that's a boring
Well,
goddamn definition by
that's not why
academics.
nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows what it is because the only place they actually teach critical race theory is law school. It's
Yeah.
actually the only place where it gets taught. And it's called critical race theory because that's what it is. It's a critical theory of the way that racial things impact laws in the United States. That's what it is. And it's taught to lawyers kind of specifically and nobody else. There's nobody running into public schools saying, we're going to start teaching critical race theory. It's a complete boogeyman
So
that
in part, I was right.
that's
It's just
what
the
it
right
is.
wing
It's not,
fucking going
yeah,
nuts for
that's
no
what
reason.
it is.
Yeah.
They've brought it up and now they're just terrifying the shit out of white people to
Yeah.
make them think. And here's the problem, right? Is because what critical race theory seeks to do is actually deal with what is called systemic racism, not this idea of, oh, somebody called me nigger. You know what I mean? Oh my God, they called me nigger and that ruined my whole life and now I can't do anything. That's not actually what it is. It's taking it out of this place of morality, right? Racism as an idea of morality, like racism as a white guy in a Ku Klux Klan thing burning a cross on somebody's yard and saying that no, that's not really racism. Like that's this other thing. What racism is this thing that is kind of embedded into the fabric of the society that is hard to undo without acknowledging that just the laws and the way that things were made were really biased and slanted towards one group of people. Like they applied to one group of people and did not apply to another group of people because those people weren't humans. And we just fail to recognize that that's what happened. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And how that just continued down a historical path to where we are today, right? Like the things are directly connected. So again, the reason why I don't like having these conversations is because at the end of the day, racism for me, hold on, I don't know how to turn my air. Is that loud? Can you hear that?
I don't hear anything now.
Oh, okay. Then it's not coming through the thing. Hold on, let me just do this. Tell me if that's any quieter. Because now there is
I don't
no
hear anything.
fascinating. If it heats up in here, I'm gonna turn it back on. Anyway, my issue is that I feel like this is one of those things where we're not actually talking about race. Like that's just not what we're talking about. It's like it's what we pretend to talk about, right? What we're really talking about is a caste system that we refuse to acknowledge actually exists here. And it's not drastically different from any other caste system. Do you know what I mean? And that's what the problem is, right? Like you have race and you have class and you have religion, you have all these things that we use to differentiate people. But in this country, race is where the caste is put in and people are kind of graded from top to bottom. It's like you ever see that there's a Family Guy joke where the cop pulls him over and he's
Yeah,
wearing
yeah,
all the
yeah.
white
The
supremacist shit.
terrorist to
Right,
okay. Yeah, yeah. I knew where
right,
you were going. Yeah.
right. And it's like it's funny, but that's actually what really happens, right? Like, and
Oh,
this is the this is the thing, right? Like, and this is where this stuff becomes a problem, and this is where like I have to like not say shit that sounds offensive, but it's not offensive. It's just kind of like you know. But
hey, they
I
just arrested all those militants without shooting anybody.
yeah, there you go. See, they're getting better.
Progress.
That's right. It's what we call reform. Um, I mean, but like let's just like we act like this stuff is so long ago. You know what I mean? And we act like this is something we should just get over. But like let's just do a quick analogy here, right? Let's say we'll do a handful just because let's just have some fun with this. Let's say you let's say your grandparents bought a house a long time ago, right? On the GI Bill. I'm kidding. But let's say your grandparents bought a house, right? And your your mother and father inherit it, and then you inherit it. So you move into this house with your family.
That
What
would
are
have been
you
nice. Would have saved me some
right,
money.
right? And but what are you gonna do, right? Well, you're gonna look at it. You're gonna go, oh shit. Let me think. There's a diagonal crack here in the wall. Yeah, I should probably look into that and make sure that's not gonna be a real problem. That I think it was a problem for Pop and for Grandpa, but let me just make sure it's not a problem for me, right? And you're gonna go down to the foundation and be like, oh my god, there's some real design flaws in this. Like, when they built this, like they kind of fucked it up. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They made a lot of really good decisions. It lasted this several hundred years, but there's some real problems in this. We're gonna have to get this fixed and get a lot of this stuff done, or this
I
house is
should
gonna
turn this
fucking
into
fall apart.
condos in Miami.
Right, exactly. Didn't somebody comment on your thing too soon?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like that's what you would do, right? Like you would inspect it and you would go and then you would fix all the things that were wrong. You wouldn't just ignore them. And if you ignored the problems in the structure, in the foundation, and the stuff, the structure would crumble, right? That it was what would happen. You just wouldn't do it, right? It's a silly analogy, but you get it.
No, I get it. Yeah.
Let's throw out another one. Let's say you went to the doctor, found out you had a sickness that you didn't know you had, and it somehow ran in your family. Like, what are they going to ask you? They're going to ask you a history, right? They're going to say, "What's your medical history?" You're going to go on the internet and start looking up all the ways in which, shit, am I predisposed for this kind of cancer, heart disease, high blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. What can I do to avoid this? And you're going to go in and you're going to actually take it really seriously, right? No doctor will actually even give you a diagnosis without a medical history that goes back 1 to 2 generations. You know what I mean? And yet, when it comes to this country, we decide we're not going to look at this thing that has clearly been a problem since day one, right? It's clearly been a problem. The dehumanization of other people. It's not the enslaving of other people. It's the dehumanization of other people. It's we talk about slavery and everyone goes slavery, slavery, slavery. It's not about slavery. It's about the fact that there were actual laws about murder and rape and incest and all kinds of things, and they did not apply when you visited those kinds of crimes upon black bodies. It did not constitute a crime. It just didn't, right? There was a dehumanization. They'd been dehumanizing white children from the time they were little children. You'd go to a fair and you'd have a baseball and there'd be a black dude sitting on where, the dunk tanks, what we have. There was just no thing to hit. You actually hit the person. And it's like, it sounds funny. Like, oh my God, they throw balls at person. Oh, like something we watch in a comedy movie. But that's real life. There's little white children throwing bloody baseballs at black people as children because that was a normal thing to do. Like the dehumanization of a person and then violence visited upon them for 12 generations. Like, let's not talk about the people that happened to. Let's talk about the people who did that. Like, that's what we never talk about, right? This is the part of critical race theory that becomes an issue for me, is that we're always talking about the effects of slavery on black people and what it did to destroy the black community. That's obvious what it did to destroy the black community. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But what does it do to a group of people who claim that if a black child has a father who's a criminal and in jail, that kid's predisposed to being a criminal, right? There's like that belief, right? Whenever they shoot someone on black kid, well, his father was in jail for it's like, oh, well, that makes sense why they killed him then, you know? And I'm not saying that it was racist or wasn't racist when they shot. I'm not even talking about the kid. What I'm talking about is what does that say about a group of people who decide to build a land for liberty and freedom? And the first thing they do is the genocide of a people and the enslaving of another people. And then they pretty much decide that they can do whatever they want for 12 generations, and then that still maintains that they're good people. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a real disconnect between like the idea that you would beat someone for trying to escape or crying because their child is being taken, or you'd beat a man, you'd kill a man because you're raping his wife in front of him and he just can't stand there and watch it for the 10th time. So he says something and then they literally beat him to death and leave him out so everybody else knows their place. It's like that's what this country is built on,
Okay.
you know?
Yes. So here's where so I think we're on the same page, sort of, in that what I said earlier, like, yeah, fucking teach our history, warts and all. Okay.
Sure.
Where I start to play, and I've done this to you before, I've done this a million
Mm,
times, where I start to play devil's advocate is we like to pretend that America invented racism. that we're the worst fucking country in the world because of slavery and what we continue to do, without ever saying it's a fucking human trait. Like, throughout history, the conquerors beat the shit out of the conquerees.
Not the
And
same way though.
oh,
This is no,
fucking,
but
you
dude,
you don't
no, but
think Genghis
listen.
Khan did?
That's not that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is this is actually what the problem is. The problem is that when we talk about this stuff, when black people talk about it, we're talking about it. Like, I hate to make these comparisons because it somehow implies that Charlie Parker is somehow better than Louis Armstrong, and that's not at all what I'm saying. It's just more complex and more sophisticated. It's not better or worse or anything like that. It's not a judgment. But this is like talking to people who listen to Louis Armstrong and go, "Wow, did you hear that? He played a triad and it was cool." When we're sitting here talking about Charlie Parker, and like it's a deeper analysis of a problem, because when people say things like, well, slavery existed everywhere, not like here. It's just not, it's just isn't. It's like what you're, no, but like, because what you're talking about
you,
here
you should
is
read
not
Sebastian Younger.
slavery.
No, what book did I just read?
Oh,
Fuck.
but
See,
I mean,
here's
it's
my
not a,
problem.
mm-hmm,
I read shit and I glean the information without remembering the source. So I know what
sure.
I've learned, but I don't know how or where. So I can't cite, I can't footnote anything. But yeah, no, it was like here and it was worse and it's worse world. I mean, I'm gonna do a shitty comparison right now. So I'm just doing it to throw it out there, not because I'm trying to thump America's chest or anything like that. But I mean, humans suck. Okay, as a species, we're fucking horrible to one another, and we always have been. And it um just in the past decade, in the past 15 years, we watched what happened in Syria, and I don't even keep track anymore. Taliban became ISIS. It must have been ISIS that raped the shit out of women to breed the wrong religion out of them. And so your comeback might be, so you're saying we're better than ISIS? I'm like, yeah, we're better than ISIS. That's the whole point, is like every stage of human evolution is in flux. And it's like I said a second ago before we got off on a tangent, like Genghis Khan, he would go in and they would just kill women and babies to try and to eliminate an entire species. Are we better than Genghis Khan? Yes, thankfully we've evolved since then, but the slavery here was not worse than anywhere else. It's horrible worldwide. I mean, shit, in our lifetime, what was it? Rwanda? Yeah, Rwanda, where two sects of people decided they hated each other and one got frisky and, took hatchets, machetes to other people. This shit happens. And now I hear what you're saying. We do need to examine ours. And that's where I'm coming in and saying, yeah, fucking let's tell our history to everybody, warts and all. But we shouldn't, where I said we shouldn't, I don't want to say feel guilty, because we tend to beat ourselves down like, oh my God, we're so horrible. We have this horrible history. Yeah, we have a horrible fucking history. What can we do moving forward? That's where I always want to go, is like
I mean,
acknowledge and continue forward.
but here's the thing, and this is where this stuff becomes a problem because our understanding of it is just vastly different, right?
Okay.
And I'll say that because like
Well, yeah, I don't have your experiences, your life experiences. I'm not saying I
it's
have.
not even my life experiences. It's just the simple fact that like you're talking about a place. It was one of the 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 transatlantic slave trade had a very different thing to it than the other ones. And I'm not saying that one tragedy is worse than the other. I'm saying that they're not the same, right? A slave in this country, the way slavery was designed in this country was, again, much more like a caste system than it was like a class system. People talk about it like it's class, like, well, black people can make money now, and because they can make money, they should shut the fuck up because that's all that matters. But you can be rich. There, the half the stories to you are anecdotal, but to me are just my friends and family.
Hmm.
Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
fair
My
enough.
my black dentist who gets pulled over in his Mercedes every day or three times a week, you know what I mean, because he lives here. You know what I mean? And this part, it's like that's what we're talking about. And it's like, oh, well, you just got pulled over. Who cares? Right? It's like, oh, whatever. It's not a big deal. It's like, of course it's not a big deal. What is a big deal is the simple fact it's the lack of acknowledgement that this is not, it's not about slavery. It's about having a class of people that were considered untouchable for 12 generations where anything could be done to them and they could do nothing in return. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a system that is baked. When they talk about critical race theory, what they're talking about is how the shit is just baked into the laws. It's just baked in. It's like when you talk about the police and the stuff, and we don't need to go down the police path, but the police didn't start off as police. They started off as slave catchers. That's what
Right.
it was. It was a thing, and that's what it was. And arguably what it was there's a in what we're talking about is an unconscious bias. And this is like when Robbie and D'Angelo talks about this and all that stuff, everybody gets all pissed off because she's real heavy-handed with it. And she acts like there's nothing anybody can do about it.
You know,
And
she's like the
you know what
guy
I
that
mean?
taught that course. Like, don't say this
Yeah,
happened, say we.
like
Yeah,
that kind of stuff is just fucking stupid. That's just white liberals being stupid.
yeah.
Like white liberals are probably the worst thing that ever happened to black people ever. And I say that seriously
No, I
because
agree.
it's like
Well,
that
worse than
stupid.
Candace Owens.
I mean, Candace, like, I know you're joking, but like
I am
Candace
and I'm
Owens
not.
to me,
I
but
heard
like,
I was listening to a podcast that talked about her speaking at, I think it was Liberty University, and
yeah, I
getting
mean,
white people all riled up, and
oh, that's what she
telling them,
does.
yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I
getting them to
mean,
like, but getting them riled up to say that, demand the tell black people to start voting Republican and do it. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like,
but
it's a lot to put on a white person to like, hey, black friend, let me tell you
yeah,
how to act and be and do. You like,
right.
Jesus,
It's like
goddamn
friends
Christ.
don't let friends, white friends don't let their black friends vote Republican, or vote Democrat. I
Yeah,
mean, here's the thing. And on a serious note, I don't like Candace Owens, right? I
right.
don't find her interesting, or I don't find her particular brand of what she calls helping black people. I don't think her job is to help black people. It's to rationalize stupid things that white people believe. That's her point. Like her job, she claims to be helping black people, but she's not, like her tone doesn't signify
I,
help.
I I agree
You know
with
what
you.
I
I don't
mean?
think I think her whole thing is just advancing herself, and she just found
Yeah,
a niche for
yeah,
it.
I think it has nothing to do
Yeah.
with that. That being said, she's not always lying. She doesn't always tell lies. She can be
Mm.
misinformed and she can tell half truth, but some of the things are true. And some of the things she draws attention to are not lies. You know what I mean? So I do get that. I just don't think her point is to assist black people in certain ways. Maybe that shouldn't be her point. Who knows, right? But what I do think she represents is a kind of diversity, a kind of idea that black people are not this monolithic unit that all think one way. She does represent a group of black people who really do think that way. And they are just as black as I am or anybody else is. They're not more black or less black or Uncle Tom this and all that stuff. I think she's doing a little shuck and jive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which, you know what I mean, like
I
a
just
little yes boss, yes massa, you know what I mean?
well, I
But
just read
I,
about the division in the black community over the release of Mr. Bill.
yeah.
There are people that still support him, like not just Felicia Rashad. She was just the one that
I
made it
mean,
famous, but
again, what we're talking about is like what he did is egregious. No one will say it isn't egregious. Why he's out of jail has nothing to do with what he did. It has to do with the law.
yeah,
It's the
that's
law.
Jake and I talked about this
It's
week.
not fucking personal. It's the law. The guy said, if you say this, you will not serve any jail time. And
Yeah,
that's a legally binding document. That's what we do with criminals all day, every day. We make deals with them, and they made a deal with him and they just didn't like it. And then they
yep,
decided to go back on it, and that's illegal. That's
hmm,
what it is. It's not about whether or not I think he belongs in jail or don't think he belongs in jail. It's about the simple fact that they broke the fucking law when they put him in jail for something
yep.
they made a deal for.
I
And
agree.
that's nothing more, nothing less. It's
I'm
like
just saying about no. I'm not. I agree with you 100%. I'm talking about the Felicia Rashad and there's apparently, and I don't know this. I'm not a part of it. Older generation of African Americans that are kind of on his side because the Huxtable could never do that because of what he represented.
it's not because of what he represents. It's because of how old they are. It's
Yeah,
because they come from a generation. If you watch Joe Brown, he talks about it, and he's kind of a dick about it. He's kind of a dick about it. And I'm not on his side about it,
I don't know
Like
who Joe Brown is.
he's the judge. Oh, he's one of those.
Oh, Judge Joe, like Judge
Yeah,
Judy, like
yeah,
Wapner. Okay,
yeah, right. He's mean black judge, right?
gotcha.
And but he was kind of like, well, listen, have you guys never heard of groupies? Like you talk to these women and they'll say, I went back to his place and yes, we were gonna go drink and do some drugs. And then they drank and he gave them some drugs and then they had sex. But what did they think was going to happen when it's not like I think that and his point is like, and I don't know how it went. I really don't. So I don't really want to weigh in on this
Yeah.
as a Bill Cosby issue, but as an
Well,
issue,
as Jake
right?
always says, it's he said, she 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 said, up to
Yes,
60. I mean,
absolutely,
once you get
absolutely,
to 60, you're pretty sure he's a fucking rapist, you know, like
absolutely. I think that I think what he did is egregious.
yeah.
If it is really what is being said, here's where it becomes a problem, right? This is where it becomes a problem. It's like again, people go, why do black folks believe in chemtrails? Because of the Tuskegee experiments. That's why we don't
Why does
have
my idiot white friend believe in them then?
well, because of the Tuskegee experiments. You understand? You know why? Because of seatbelts. They did not put
I said white.
airbags.
Why does my idiot white
Right.
friend?
Okay, but like they didn't
He
put
doesn't know what the
airbags.
Tuskegee experiments were.
Okay. Yeah, but he knows what an airbag is and what a cigarette is. They don't sell healthy cigarettes to white people. You know what I mean? They
They
didn't,
don't?
right? They didn't
God
put
damn it.
airbags when they could have put airbags and all the car lobbies lobbied against it, except for really, really rich white folks got them in their cars and nobody else. It's not like they didn't put them
It was an
in,
upgrade.
right. Right. You know, but I mean, it's not
But
like
that was
they
the thing.
care
It
about,
didn't have to be
like,
white folks. It's just more white folks were rich at that time. But
right.
it was a wealth thing. If you were wealthy, you
Right.
afforded the upgrade to
Exactly.
airbags.
Right.
If you were poor white trash in the trailer park,
Right.
you didn't get airbags.
Right.
But it was also the immigrants' fault because that's what the politician told you.
Right, exactly. Like there's this is the thing is like all this critical race theory and all this stuff. It has nothing to do with black people and white people. It has to
Yeah.
do with power and money and making white people think that their shit is being taken away from them, while the people who are actually taking it. Like, do you remember in the beginning of the election where Trump was all China, 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 China.
Yeah.
All
Oh,
my stuff is made in China,
when you're done,
and
I've
then
got an
what you
example for
know,
you really quick.
and
Go
then
ahead.
like 30 seconds later, he's talking about how China's our enemy. But in the beginning, he's talking about how they're our friends and we should give them a bunch of work and all our stuff. And it's like, man, nigga, please, like make up your mind. You know what I mean? Like this
Did
kind
you
of
see him?
backwards ass shit. You know, we just fall for it every time.
Did
You
you
know?
see him go trending on Twitter this past week?
No.
Okay, I'm going to do this really quick.
Yes, please.
The Trump organization that got indicted, the top guy, a bunch of executives, they all had criminal charges against them for tax evasion. And so Trump gives a rally in Florida, and at his rally, he goes, "Oh, they're talking about tax evasion because I what? You call that? What are you going to do? You give someone a company car, and they say that's tax evasion. You pay for their kids' private tuition. That's tax evasion. You put them up in a expensive apartment in New York. That's tax evasion. Come on, everyone!" And everyone on Twitter was saying, "Look, he's admitting to it. He's admitting that he doesn't know tax." And I'm sitting there going, he's in front of a bunch of white trash idiots that work at Walmart and talking about you and your company car, you and your private school. And it's like, those idiots are in the audience going, yeah. And then going back to their fucking shit check mobile homes. He is
I
completely
mean,
disconnected, and yet they love him for it.
but here's
He's
what
the
I'm gonna
wealth and the
say.
power,
And
and they don't
see,
care.
this is the problem right here, and this is what I think that like what white people don't understand from a psychological imprint of what it means to be a white person, whatever the fuck that is. I don't even think white people know what it means to be a white person, to be honest with you, right? Because white people don't think of themselves as white; they think of themselves as
Never
humans.
do. Yeah.
Right, you're humans and everybody else is the other, right? It's like that's the way, and that's kind of what they're talking about is just
Kind
that
of. It's
basic
not the others.
concept.
Well, okay, you're right.
But
Most white people are I'm human and
well,
they're the other humans. I'm
I mean,
Can't
I
we
don't
all just
know.
fucking stop this
But
shit? That's
except
where I
here's
come
the
from.
thing, except here's the problem, right? And this is what I wish white people would think about for just a moment. When we talk about white people, there's actually no such thing as white people. This whole idea of white and black is a made up concept and it's made up here. When we talk about racism, that's not what it is in other places. It's not It's not based on that in the same way. It's like
Well,
but more than that, like that's not even the point. The point is ultimately that like what happened is that like you could be the shittiest, poorest kind of scumbag from Europe, right? And the minute you landed here, you stopped being that
yeah,
and
you
you
started
started
being
being
white.
white.
Well,
And
that's
what you but you give up something there. You there's a buy-in, and the buy-in is at once you have to buy into the culture. Like you do that because you're coming here, because you know that because you're white you're not going to be seen as this scum from this part of Europe. You're going to be seen as a white person, and all that shit just gets washed away from you. Like all your original sin gets washed away as long as you actually just give up your culture. You think you don't give it up. You think you're still Italian or Irish or this or that, but not really. You know what I mean? So you're spell Sean with an Sean, and you have some corned beef and cabbage on St. Patrick's Day. Really? Like that's not like what like the
right.
the
But let
the
me,
culture is as gone as is the culture of African Americans for in many instances, and the same problems show up with that lack of grounding. You know what I mean?
but that goes back to what I was saying earlier is yeah, that's our baggage. That's our bullshit that we need to acknowledge and examine and understand and hopefully get the fuck over.
But,
But we didn't invent it. This is the World War
well,
II
okay,
where
but so I
Chinese
mean,
and Japanese fucking
yeah, but
hated
like,
each other.
but
It's
so
the same
what?
because
So
well,
okay,
that's what
so
I'm saying.
like,
We
but
keep
like,
pretending that we
so
invented it or that we do it best, that we're the most
okay, but
racist.
like
It's
so that
worldwide.
means like if you go and you smack your wife around because all your neighbors did it or people did it in another country, smack the wives, that makes it okay that you did yours. Like it's
No, I never said.
nonsense.
I said we need to
It's
acknowledge and
it's
understand and examine. I didn't say that.
but
I'm
I
just saying we
mean
pretend it's
but
worse
like
here when it's
but we
a
don't
worldwide
pretend it. We
phenomenon.
don't pretend it's worse. We pretend it was really bad here. I never hear black people making a comparison in that way. I hear black people compare it to things that we acknowledge are tragedies,
Yeah,
right? Like we all acknowledge that the Holocaust was a tragedy, and there's chapters and chapters and chapters in that in the books, and we study it for months in school and shit and all that stuff, and I know crazy details about that stuff that like
yeah.
I learned in school, and I
And I'm
know
saying slavery should be taught the same way, and the
yeah,
systemic
except that
racism
like
and the laws and I'm saying we should teach everything you're
absolutely
talking
I
about.
think
I'm
you're
agreeing with
absolutely
you.
right. I
I'm just
think
saying that
that
we have to stop
I
pretending that
just
America sucks and that everybody sucks because of our history when history worldwide sucks. I'm not saying it makes it okay that someone else hits their other wife. I'm saying we should all say, "Oh wow, they hit their wife, we hit our wife. This sucks. Everything needs to change." I'm just saying we should stop
but
beating ourselves up for it.
I think that it's not about beating. I think this is the thing. No, the only people talking about beating themselves up over it that I see are white people,
Yeah,
not black
it's
people.
true.
And I say that like my friend, and he considers himself a conservative. He's talking about all these liberals and they're whining and crying, and then he goes, "But Antar, I turn on the TV and I see all these things that white people supposedly did and this and that, and it makes me feel bad. Why do I gotta watch this stuff? Why do I gotta see this stuff? It makes me feel bad. It hurts my feelings." And I'm like, oh, so what? The facts care about your feelings now?
Right.
Like what the fuck? Like
Well,
eat a
that's why
dick,
we have
son.
alternative facts now, so that people's feelings don't
Right,
get hurt by
right.
reality.
But like, here's the problem, and this is what to me it really comes down to is we've created a system because I agree with you. Like you and I are fundamentally on the same page, right?
Yeah,
I what I think is that I think that you say these things, and I think that they are right. I think your understanding of what happened here, and I don't mean that in a comparison of whether it's good or bad or better or worse in other places. I don't mean in any kind of comparative way, but I think your actual understanding of what happened here is not that broad.
fair enough.
That's what I think, right?
Okay.
My guess is you know a lot more about World War II just passively than you do about the transatlantic slave trade and Jim Crow South and all that stuff. Just passively, you know much
I,
more about
I
that
won't
stuff.
disagree with you.
And I think that in a passive way, when you and here's the thing, this is what my issue is because I say this to you and we joke about this, but like, you know, the TV show Bosch? You ever watch that on Amazon?
Lydia watches it. It
All right.
has that kid from The Wire on it.
Yeah. Right. Love that show. Love it.
Yeah,
Loved it
she really likes it. I
from
think they just
season
announced
one.
their final season.
Yeah. I just watched it. I love it. I love those quote unquote smart cop procedurals, slow burn, cerebral cop procedurals and shit. I love that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Here's what I notice. Right. What I notice in these things, and that show, this is what I mean. Like when we talk about, like, it just sounds so ridiculous when people say this stuff. Oh, that's here. That's squeaking door. It's coming through the microphone.
That's fine. Yeah.
No, it's here. I was like, where's that coming from? Because I heard
Oh,
it through here, not there.
gotcha.
Um, like the real issue is that like I love that show. And when I'm watching it, what I saw was a white guy decide he was gonna break with protocol, procedure, chain of command, and everything else he did was there, and then watch his black partner tell him that's suicide. Don't do that. It's career suicide. No one's gonna, and him go, but I have to. It's the right thing to do. It's a 10-year-old girl. And I'm acting badly because I'm being dramatic, but he acted quite well. So I'm not, it's not even like the acting is bad. Like the quality of everything is good. It's but that the focus is that here's a guy who gets to do whatever he wants, not lose his job, curse out his black boss, tell him fuck you and all this other stuff. And I'm like, really? That's how that goes? Really? Like you can just buck chain of command and you can do this because you're a white guy. And then his black partner goes, Harry, it's career suicide. You can't do it. And Harry goes, but it's a 10-year-old girl. I have to, Edgar. And then he goes, but Harry, you can't do it. No, man, you can't do it. It'll ruin you. No, you can't do it. Well, all right, if you're going to do it, I better go with you. Really, nigga, please. That's not what would happen. Like, it's like these movies, like, and when we talk about it, it's like it sounds funny, but like, I will challenge you in the next 2 weeks to find a movie where there's a black main character who breaks a whole bunch of rules and a whole bunch of laws and there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and all his white friends sacrifice their time, their needs, and their stuff to make sure his agenda gets pushed through. Find it for me. I guarantee that, you know what I mean?
Richard Donner has passed away. It's very sad. He directed a little film called Lethal Weapon.
Uh-huh.
And Murtaugh at the end takes command and says, I'm responsible for, it's exactly what you're saying, for Riggs when he's beating the shit out of Gary Busey. He says, I'm in charge here. So he puts it all on the line for Mel Gibson.
Right.
No, you should watch it. It does harken back to a simpler time of fictionalized race relations, because it's not. It's just a great fucking movie is all. But it's everything you just said. As Murtaugh's in charge, and
but this is like everything from Harry Potter on up. I watch Harry Potter and I go, do you wonder why your children act like this? It's because they watch movies, and it sounds stupid. It sounds like,
wait,
oh,
you lost
ridiculous.
me. Act like what? Pretending to be wizards?
No,
I'm confused.
You have a movie, and I see this a lot. You watch a lot of Disney, not Disney stuff, but any of that kind of stuff. And again, I'm not saying this. I don't like Harry Potter. I'm not saying because I don't like these things, but when I watch a situation where a little boy,
the kids are in charge and the adults
and the kids are in charge,
and
you have a 13-year-old kids going, should we tell the adults? No, they'll just mess it all up. Really, you're not. And then I watch like 13-year-old wizards outsmart wizards are supposed to be a few hundred years. It's like, get the fuck out of here. And they're so much smarter, and they always have the answers and everything. Like it paints a picture in your mind that everybody is not the star of their movie, that they are all supporting actors in your movie. Like there's something that happens in this culture, and I'm not saying that it's a white black thing at this point. I think it's an American thing that everybody does, where we forget that like in your movie, you're the star. And I may be the best supporting actor in your movie, and like in certain phases of your life, I might be the best supporting actor, right? And in other phases, it's somebody else. And then here's your wife, she's a supporting character, and all of them, then these kids are your supporting characters, but you are the main character in the movie in your head. But you kind of acknowledge that, like, your wife is the hero of her story,
Hmm.
right? And that together you guys support each other to be the heroes in your own lives, right? But when you watch movies and TV, it's not like that. There is one person, and everybody else's goal is to make sure that person gets what they need. Like the whole point of the show is centered around this one
Yeah.
person doing something and everybody else being somebody that assists them in this process to the point of their own personal degradation and,
And
you
then,
know what I mean, and
can I
all
guess
that
where you're going?
stuff.
And then now we have a younger generation getting raised to believe that everybody should sacrifice for
Right.
you.
Exactly. And we're
Yeah.
letting 19 and 20-year-olds make decisions that they have literally no experience to make because of how they feel, because of what we've said. And the problem is that as a country, we've done the exact same thing. And we just won't acknowledge that this country is just remarkably immature, right?
That's fucking true.
Like we created a system here where one group of people decided, and again, we can say this, we just not let's not make it a race issue. Let's not even use terms black, white, this stuff, that stuff, right? We
It's
talk about
a wealth issue, is what it is. But
I mean, it's a wealth issue and a perceived wealth issue. This is again what the difference between class and caste is,
yeah,
right? The difference is that like I can transcend class. You know what I mean? But I can't stop it a person when I walk into a store from thinking that I'm going to steal something more than you are.
yeah.
Right? I can't stop that. Even though I can have a lot of money, I can't stop that. Now, that person, this is what Beverly D'Angelo's talking about. And whether I agree with her or not, I don't know that I agree with her to the extent that she would expect me to, right? But like what I would say is that like what because your first thought when you see a black person is oh no, that doesn't mean that that's what you act on. And you think that not because you're white supremacist or racist, but because you've been trained to think that, right? It's terrorism. It's emotional terrorism, right? Like the reason why they can say all day, oh, statistically speaking, these black people aren't likely to get shot by cops. Statistically speaking, I'm not likely to get shot by a cop, right? And out of all the millions of interactions, right, you have a few people who die. Statistically speaking, you would argue it could be insignificant, right? I don't know what the numbers are, but given how many traffic stops there are throughout a year and how many fatalities there are, and then you break them up by demographics and stuff, you could argue that those numbers are statistically arguably insignificant, probably, is my guess, right? It doesn't change the fact that it's the exact same tactics that they used back in the day to keep slaves in line. One did something out of line or made you feel uncomfortable. You killed him, so all the others behaved. People argue, well, they would never do that. It was their property and they had to pay money. It's like bullshit. That's a lie. It's a nonsense thing that people tell themselves. Was somebody acted up, they murdered them in front of everybody. That's what they did. They murdered them in front of everybody so everybody else would behave. And what happens when I see a bunch of black people get killed by cops? I understand from a rational perspective that I'm probably not in a whole lot of danger as long as I keep my cool and quote unquote do what I'm told and comply, blah blah blah, right? And don't do anything like that. Chances are nothing's gonna happen. And that's probably right. It doesn't change the fact that I'm fucking terrified, right?
Okay.
Now,
Yeah,
if
well, you
mhm.
had me, then you lost me. Just on one word, you said tactic. Are you saying tactic means it's a tactical move? That it's. I get the slavery reference of killing the one to keep the rest in line, but the way you use that modern, as if you're saying it's done right now. Whereas I think I agree with every you're saying. I get I I don't feel your fear, but I understand it. If that makes sense, I'm trying to. I don't. I feel, but I do. I think it's more media manipulation than anything. I think it's more media
I
going, "Oh, we got to get clicks, so let's just keep screaming this cop black
absolutely,
thing so that we get clicks
absolutely.
and division and hate."
I will not disagree with you one bit. I would argue that this is where the caste thing comes in. There's something, and this is the part that people don't understand, right? there's a thing that happens, and I want you to pay attention to this. Like again, next time you're watching TV, notice everybody's focus is on. Notice who sacrifices for the main character. Notice all these things. And you're like, oh wow, I noticed this a lot. And you're like, oh, that's funny. And this is a good quality show. And I don't think the show's doing it on purpose. That's what I mean. It's not on purpose. It's literally just the unconscious way. My guess is the scripts that get passed through are the ones that check all the mental boxes in people's minds that say, this doesn't make me feel this other way.
Hmm.
Like the way that racism works, it's not about you calling me nigger and shit like that. Like that's again, it's like this white person boogeyman that like, oh well, I'm not a racist, and that's the worst thing you could say. Really, being called a word racist is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. Like I hear white people say that all the
Well,
time.
it was that and syphilis, but racist
Right,
is
right, exactly. It's like, oh no, they call me a racist. It's like, oh my God, grow up. Like, grow up. Like, Jesus Christ, right? But like, that's right. I took the Lord's name in vain. No, but like, I think what racism is, when we talk about it from a caste perspective, it's an idea that when black people walk in a room, they automatically self-adjust to fit the comfort level of a white person without that person ever even knowing it happened. And that's what it is. It's a system in which black people have been trained to act a certain way around people so that those people never have to confront racism. That's what
so
it is. You know what
are
I
are
mean?
are you saying then, uh speaking for all black people, which you have the right to
That's
do
what
on
I
this
do,
podcast,
right?
that we are in a better place today because now white people are just as fucking flinchy when we're around black people
It's not
because
that.
it's been
It's that black people are tired of having to play that game.
no, but now white
Right?
people are playing it, is what I'm saying. So is that a good
Right.
thing? Is it progress because now Whitey is
Except the
going
problem
back to
here,
Family Guy? It's Brian wanting to tell that joke,
right.
uh, and the black guy
Yeah.
pops up from the potted plant. You know the reference I'm making?
Vaguely.
Yeah, he's like,
Yeah.
so wait a second. Looks or no, Stewie's telling the joke. I don't know. He searches all around,
Right.
and then he's like, so this black guy, and then a black guy pops up from the potted plant, like what? And he's like, something like that.
I mean, that's the thing. And I notice, see, here's the thing. I have a very special relationship with this kind of stuff because I grew up in a really particular way, right? Because and I will say to you that as much as racism is a white thing, right? It's not. It's a culture thing, right? Like black people were equally as racist to me as a child, right? In the sense of you're not black enough, right? And it's like, oh, because slave master said this is what it means to be black. Fuck off, nigga, please. Like you know what I mean? Like I'll curse them out just because
Say
there's
once that's
you know.
what flipped Candace a little bit. I can't remember. Not
I
not that I
mean,
want to return back to her.
to a degree, yes. Like it wasn't that it was that something happened to her where it could have been perceived as a race. The way I understand it is there's a white kid who had a crush on her
Hmm.
and she didn't like him. And so he and a bunch of his friends, one of them happened to be the son of somebody
You've
prominent.
told me this
And
before.
then
Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah, yeah,
called
yeah,
up
yeah.
and they told her they wanted to hang her
Yeah.
and murder her like that nigger Martin Luther King. Now, the problem
Mm.
is that's some pretty inflammatory shit to
Yeah.
sound somebody's answering machine. And
Yep.
then people came and tried to turn it into a racial issue. And she was like, well, it
Yeah, it
wasn't
sounds
quite
racial.
race. Well, she was like, it wasn't quite racist. It was the
I hate
meanest
this
thing he
woman.
could
Yeah.
say to
Yeah.
me. And so he just went there. And there's no reason to ruin his life because of it. And so then they started saying things that she claimed she never said and things like that. So I get where she's coming from because I think her point was accurate. Like the kid said something real fucked up. There's no need for it to ruin his life. The problem is that this is where again we get into all these issues, right? Like that law, the way that the law works, it doesn't apply evenly to everyone. And I know that it's different schools and different campuses and different jurisdictions and different things like that. So we can't always make these comparisons, right? But there's crazy comparisons between that guy Brock, who who was literally, I think, found passed out.
Was no, he was raping her. He was
He was
found
like
in, yeah,
like and she was all passed the fuck
she
out
was,
and
yeah.
shit, and he was raping her, and he gets off because the judge doesn't want to ruin his career, and a black guy got caught in a situation that was actually significantly less compromising than that, from my understanding of it. Again, I gotta get the details, so don't quote me on it.
All right.
And he goes to jail for a bunch of years. It's like there is a way in which the law does not apply evenly to people, and we can talk about it being a money thing and talk about it being wealth, not race, and things like class, not all these other things. But when you bar people from entries into your class, then and then argue it's only
Yeah.
class, it's like fuck off. Like again, go fuck yourself. Like what are you talking about? Do
I
you
don't
know what
want
I
to get too
mean?
deep into the Brock Turner thing. I'll just anybody that happens to be watching or listening, and I wish I could. This is again. This is what I told you earlier about having information but not remembering.
Right.
I know it was Malcolm Gladwell. I
Yes.
don't remember what book it was, or if it was his podcast, or both. Maybe he wrote about it and then put it on his podcast. But he has very interesting and insightful shit to say about the Brock Turner case. Uh, the
Yes.
starting point is Brock Turner is a piece of shit. The where he starts to focus is where nobody wants to focus, is maybe focus on alcohol. And I'm just going to leave it at
I
that. And
mean,
it's not a matter of what was
dude,
she wearing, how much did she have to drink. It's I'm not going to put any words into Malcolm Gladwell's mouth because he has plenty of his own. I just found it fascinating, and it's one of those things where I was reading it or listening to it going, I can't believe he's getting away with this because it's so intelligent and insightful, and everybody just wants to scream what they want to scream without paying attention to the world around them. I
I
don't know.
mean, it was also a handful of years ago before things started to go this wild. Malcolm Gladwell's also biracial,
Yeah.
and he's really not. I don't know that he's on sides. You know, I know
No,
what you're talking about.
well, he's on the
I
side of let me just examine the situation and
Yeah,
draw
I mean
conclusions. It's
the major component is out, but again, this is what I mean when we talk about the fact, like this is again what I want white people to understand. They don't actually care about you either.
yeah,
Like the
no,
idea that like white people are this monolithic unit and that they're not, that they get along, that this group of white people gets along with this group of white people, and that like I know what white people say about white people. When we talk about racism, and I go, the people who get affected by racism the most are poor white people. And everybody goes, what the fuck are you talking about? And I go, they're sold this belief that they are the same as the dominant caste people, and they're not the same. They've never been the same. They've been nothing more than the watchdog. They stand outside and make a lot of noise while the people stand inside and eat their food. That's what it's always been. That's what it will be. And they do not see it. And it drives me crazy. You know what I
and I
mean?
hate the example I'm about to use because I already used it and I want to stop using it, but I'm sorry, it just pops into my head. Trump is my go-to guy. The same example I used earlier of like where he was saying, what, so my company car, and he's talking to people that will never have a company car, but they feel
But
they're on the same side.
again,
And you look at
again,
him and how quickly he cuts people loose the instant he no longer has a use for them, but still says,
yeah,
you know, hey, you're my people. You need to follow. Yeah, he's the best
yeah.
at it. We should start
But I
wrapping
mean,
this up.
again, this is again the problem with the white liberal is there was this idea that if you just showed people what Trump was really about,
Oh,
that then
yeah,
they would see it. The problem is that he's not about money. The people didn't vote for him because they wanted to make money. People voted for him because he stands for whiteness.
yeah.
That's what he stands for. He stands for that stuff. And he uses the same exact stuff that the fucking what was his name Wallace used back in the
George Wallace.
50s,
He yeah,
right? He
he ran
uses like
Nixon's
these
Southern strategy. Just that's
right. And it's like, and we watch this, and because we don't know anything about history, we don't do it. And to tie back into your fucking how everybody else does this. So my friend is married to a German woman, and he's black, and she's a white German woman, and they're talking about critical
that's
race
got to be fun
theory.
for the families at Christmas.
Right, exactly. So they're sitting there and they're talking about it, and she's talking about critical race theory, and she goes to, and he's American. She goes, your country's so stupid. Like you guys are so dumb. Like She goes, Jesus Christ, they rammed that shit down our throats here. What we did and how we did it and how we took part in it and how we did it. So now we won't do it again. Like they rammed it down our throats. They taught us what we did. They showed us how it happened. They showed us how it rose up. They teach it in the history classes how it rose up, how it
Which is where I
started,
started. We
and now it
need to
is.
be teaching this
And
shit.
when if you go to South Africa, where by
Hmm.
all accounts there should have been a bloody revolution where people like got their heads lopped off,
Hmm.
and
But
that's not what
Mandela nipped that
happened.
shit in the bud.
They had a truth and reconciliation where everybody's told what they did and how it worked and how the system worked, and they
To
broke
be
it down.
fair, all we hear out
Don't
of
want to
Europe,
do that.
though, is the rise of the right because they're still extremist groups. So we'll never be done with it. But
There are,
yeah,
we
but it's not the
won't be,
mainstream. Yeah,
but it's like, but we won't do that here. And the problem is that here we have the added bonus that if we decide that we're going to do that, like if we decide, right, to become American, right, you are just as American as I am, and you and I are just as American as this other person, right? Like you're not more American or less American or any of that stuff. And we start working together, this country really could be something, but it's going to take a certain amount of like integration involves compromise. That's the problem is at the end of the day integration involves compromise and people nobody wants to compromise like everybody wants to be able and I say that being black people too right like all people kind of want to retain what makes us uniquely us while starting to somehow also be part of a collective and I'm not sure that we're able to retain the things that we want to we might only be able to retain the things we have to and over a course of time I think that in reality, in the same way that white Irish and Italian and Polish and whoever people came here many generations ago and gave up their culture to become white, and black people kind of came here, right? And their culture would and didn't give up their but it was taken away but the end result is the same whether you handed it over in a Faustian bargain right or you had it beaten out of you because the devil beat you and took your soul right
we're
doesn't
all
matter
here now.
right well at
Yeah,
the end of the day the devil still got your soul whether you signed it
yeah,
away so you could become white or it was beaten out of you so you would stay black it doesn't fucking matter you still are a soulless motherfucker right whether
that's true.
and I think
Well,
that
you just
when
made me realize something. When you, every time I say the rest of the world is like this too, what I forget is we're a fucking experiment. The rest of the
right,
world is homogenized. Where
right, like
when I
they've
say
worked this shit
Japan
out.
hated China, it's because Japan is Japanese and China
Right,
is Chinese,
right. Like
and
we're
we're a mix of
yeah,
all these things. Although the Chinese have their infighting too, because all they did was China started like this and then expanded. Uh, taking over
yes.
other air
I
and so but
mean,
yeah it's we are not homogenous like other places that hate one another.
no, no,
Everybody finds
and
reasons to hate. We just
but I
we're
mean,
throwing it all into the melting pot
but
to
I
make it
think that
super interesting.
when it comes back to the thing about the alcohol and stuff, which was the original thing that brought me to this ridiculous tangent, is
Hmm.
that at the end of the day,
Artificially
that
intelligent tangent.
exactly that they they don't care right like we talk about this all the time and I always go to the extremes because that's just what I do the priests were raping little white boys like it was nothing and nobody did anything about it because they
White
just
people were ignoring it.
white people ignored it
Hmm.
like when a cop shoots a white kid playing with
What?
a toy gun white people don't care because the white people don't
Well,
see
the
themselves as
media
white
didn't care because they yeah it happens.
but
um
white people but it doesn't
85,000 Boy Scouts, 85 in the most current lawsuit that just got settled.
right
85,000.
right. Like there's an inability here for white people to see themselves as the culprit. And that is what that poisons a lot of this stuff. There's like an inability to see
It's
oneself as being like when we talk about like
here.
what has
Wait,
happened.
let me break it down. We got to wrap this up. But let me
Fine.
break what you are saying to anybody that's not gleaning. It is, it's if I'm hearing you correctly, it's the difference between bad priest versus black people. The difference between
Right.
bad scoutmaster versus oh let's follow that black person in the store. Like yeah, that's the
Right.
caste system because you can have a
Right.
bad apple black
Right.
people are all apples
Right,
that are,
exactly.
yeah,
Right. Like no matter how many bad cops there are, and it's like, oh, you're just a rotten apple. Oh, really? But isn't what is the saying? A rotten
yeah.
apple spoils the bunch. Like, but somehow we don't use the whole saying, even though that's what we say. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is this idea of the purity and sanctity of white ideas and white crimes. Like when white men are raping little white boys, that's somehow okay. Like they're just it's like, did you see Westworld where the robots were just
I
all right,
tried a couple episodes of that and I just, well, fuck you. I just, that's,
all
that
right.
was my response. Like almost by the end of episode one, like this better get good fast because everybody was
Well,
critically acclaimed shit, according to
it
me.
gets interesting because it's one of those things where you see he says something where he goes, well, they're programmed not to see it. If I don't want them to see this door, they don't see it.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, and that's the way this country is. Like, we're actually programmed not to see it. We have all these defense mechanisms around it, and you notice it all the time, right? Like if your wife gets too close to some shit you don't want to deal with, what happens? You get into an argument about it. It's not like because you have a defense mechanism around it that you're unaware of. It's just been programmed into you from the time you were a kid. There's a thing that happens, so she gets near it, and you can't even get near it. When you get near it, your mind pushes you away from it, right? And you know that you have these things because we all have them, and yet we deny that we have these blind spots, and there are legitimate blind spots that, and I will argue that Black people as a people, if we can say that, there's certain blind spots that we have culturally. There's things that I think we might embrace that we might want to, it might be time to let them go, right? But I think that, so I don't think it's a
DJ
thing that is
Khaled.
you, right? Another one. We
Yeah,
make the
let
best music.
cut him the fuck out. You don't need to support him just because he's black.
Oh, yeah,
Well, let's
he
bring it
cracks
all
me up,
home
man.
then, because that's where we are today. Is the woke left is screaming, "Oh my God, look at these blind spots," and the right is saying, "How dare you take off my blinders?" And that's where this all started tonight with this
Right.
conversation,
But I mean,
which
but
was it's
that's
just another wedge issue of my opinion. Just teach all our history.
but
Let's
it's but
fucking get it all out
I
on the
mean,
table.
but but here's what I'll say in
Oh, hold on.
closing.
Yeah, we should start. Yeah, we got to go because the furnace is kicking on because I cranked up the air
Uh
so that it wouldn't kick on, and
yeah.
it's going to get noisy. I tested.
Oh yeah. All right. No,
So
we can finish this later.
katiehenrymusic.com.
Ah, Katie Henry, now officially a rough artist
Do you have
on
a
Rough
title for the album that you can
Records.
give out yet?
Oh
All right.
no,
Well, we're
but the
still looking for
album is gonna
September,
drop not October, October
October.
15th.
All right.
First
Oh,
single, I think it'll be in August, second single in September, record drops October.
and if you don't want to wait for that, you can go check out her first album, High Road. Go to Katie
Absolutely.
Henry Music for all the upcoming dates to practice for the upcoming album. You can visit antargoodwin.com for all
You
things
can indeed.
Antar, bass lessons or just music and or other.
Indeed.
I'm at nathantimmel.com. I have a book that I'm pushing every week because I want to sell copies of it. It's called We Are 100,
It's really good.
and people seem to like it. When either that or all the people that have hated it have been really, really kind in not writing negative reviews because all the reviews have been positive. And if they say, and the quote is that someone that has a positive experience will tell one friend, someone that has a negative experience will tell 10 friends. So if people didn't like my book, my thing would, I think they would go on there and like, right, this fucking book sucked, but nobody's
Mm-hmm.
doing that. So check it out. All right. Good talking to you, my friend.
Yeah, you
We
too,
can
man.
pick up right here next week if you want.
Good
We got
lord.
so much to cover. And
Let's not talk about race.
all right, well, I'm going to talk to you off air about something I thought we
Yeah,
could talk about, but then I
yeah,
wasn't
indeed.
sure I wanted to. All right.
Nah, yeah, man. I'll talk to you in a minute.
Bye, everyone.